Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast,
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we're continuing our series of Walt Disney World theme parks on opening day, and we are moving on to Hollywood Studios, which brought the drama 100%. Like,
all the drama.
if you came to this podcast looking for historical theme park plus theme park drama plus the birth of the Universal Disney theme park clashes,
Whoa.
This is the podcast for you.
Wow. I mean, if that's not a hook,
If
I was a fish, I would bite on that hook.
We've done like 300 of these. We have to, every now and then we have a good one. So, but before we get into that, I want to cover some Disney news, which it works out perfectly. I love when Disney does this. Like, they somehow know what we're going to talk about every week, and then they have news related to that. So the news this week is related to Hollywood Studios. Nice. And we're talking about opening day of Hollywood Studios, MGM Studios. But a pretty big announcement. Disney announced that Disney is closing Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy on October 7th, and it is going to be a new Disney Villains stage show that will be debuting sometime in summer of 2025.
I'm pretty excited about this. I don't think the Lightning McQueen stage show is one of my favorite things. So for them to, take that, replace it with a villain show, which I'm guessing is sort of like an early attempt at, okay, what's some of the things that we can work on for Villains Land? And they can take this as like a seed of an idea and then see how much they can develop it and see how well it works. I feel like it's going to be like almost, I don't want to say a soft launch because it's not, but like
kind of like testing out the villains.
Seeing what they can do with it, how people respond. And so I think that this is a really interesting idea. I don't think it's going to be a long running show. I mean, I think it'll be a couple years, but
and that's what Lightning McQueen was there for a few years. The area that it is in an amphitheater. It's all bleacher seating. So it's not like, where Beauty and the Beast is, where you can fit thousands of people or Fantasmic. So this is going to be a show that I imagine is going to be very popular.
Yeah.
I imagine they look at this as, because it's interesting. It's all, it's more live entertainment. So which is costly to have all of those actors, and that's not something Disney typically does. But I immediately said, this is going to be so crowded, they're going to sell lightning lanes for it, and probably make more money than they're going to have to pay for this show. So this is why they're switching this. But the idea of the show is that you're going to the realm of the magic mirror. They talked about some familiar faces like Cruella de Vil, Captain Hook, Maleficent. I'm with you. I think they're testing out what villains work, what villains don't work.
I think that they do need Hades in there, I think. I think there's a couple villains like that have a certain je ne sais quoi. Like I think Hades has like the humor aspect that makes him really great. I think Cruella de Vil does too. Like, again,
I'm sure
I talk about it all
more.
the time over in Disneyland, how Cruella is out a lot, and I think that she's one of my favorite characters over there, even though she's not really one of my favorite characters out of like all of Disney. So yeah, I think I think it'll be a really interesting thing, and I do think you are also correct in that they do tend to shy away. I mean, they closed the Star Cruiser Hotel. There have been other live action entertainment things, like things over in Epcot, that they've discontinued.
Even Disneyland, the Rogers the Musical, that was only
it was
a few
very
months.
short-lived.
Yeah.
And so they do shy away from that because it is, I'm sure, expensive for them. And so, yeah, like, I think that you are correct, though, that they're going to take this and it's going to be popular. They're anticipating it's going to be popular, and then they'll sell you some lightning.
Yeah, because I can imagine that this theater, it probably seats a few hundred people. And so it's going to be very, very crowded. I think what is interesting is, this goes away, Cars and the Cars attraction, I think, in preparation for the new Cars attraction over at Magic Kingdom. I think, like we talked about with villains, testing out villains. The interesting thing, though, is before Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy, it was Club Villains, which was an after-hours special ticketed event that they had in there where you could, it was basically like a dance party, after hours party event with all of your favorite villains. That only ran for 2 years.
Not all, I'm sure. I bet Scar wasn't there.
I'm not sure. But it was a seasonal thing. So like this, it was villains, and it was very popular, and I think people were upset when that closed, and then they made it Lightning McQueen. So it's kind of going back to that villains theme. But I'm with you. I think this runs for probably a few years, and then when Villains Land opens, this kind of closes completely.
And I think we'll see something, a show similar, taking a lot of ideas from this show over in Villains
And
Land.
hopefully a larger space, so that more people can enjoy it. So but interesting news kind of came out of nowhere on this, but very excited. I'm very excited to see this at some point in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's talk opening day Hollywood Studios. So, with Magic Kingdom and Epcot, we've already kind of looked back at those opening days. I feel like they were very straightforward in terms of, Walt had this vision to build in Florida, so they decided to build a Magic Kingdom and open a theme park in Florida. And then, they wanted to expand. They wanted to take Walt's idea for, Epcot, which his was an actual community, an actual city. They said, okay, we're going to make that a theme park. And I feel like it was very straightforward, uncontroversial in terms of building this. When we get to Hollywood Studios, there is like so much backstory and just things going on and lawsuits happening around this park.
It's
crazy.
Full of kind of drama. Like if I had to like characterize it as anything, it would just be, you are the drama.
Yeah. And I feel like, if
that's not like a plug for this.
This is when Michael Eisner comes in and becomes CEO. And I feel like Michael Eisner, and we've talked about this, he was really good. He expanded Disney. Like, he saw Florida as a vacation destination. He was one that's like, let's build another theme park, Hollywood Studios. Let's build hotels. Like, let's make this a place people want to go to. But I kind of feel like in the same respect, he was a very big personality. And I feel like because he was pushing things and he wanted to do so much, drama just kind of ensues naturally. When you're trying to expand and grow, like I feel like, with Disneyland, Disney had their nice little park there. They're like, okay, we're going to go to Florida. We're going to build another nice little park. And then Michael Eisner's like, no, we're going to be this vacation destination. We're going big. We're doing DVC. They had the whole Disney Institute where they were going to, you were going to come down and learn and you could take classes there. And then that kind of fizzled out after a couple of years. I think we did an episode on that long time ago. I believe the Disney Institute, or part of it, became part of Saratoga Springs, part of the DVC. Like, they've kind of like reused that, but like he was just doing everything, and it's just like
he tried a lot of different things.
Tried a lot and expand things.
I do admire of him as a CEO because he wasn't afraid, like we've talked before, of taking those risks. Like, he wasn't risk averse, and he was like, no, like let's do something different. Let's try to make this more of a thing. And so, there were failures, but I think that they ultimately, a lot of really awesome positive things came out of his tenure as CEO.
I think he really laid the groundwork for the modern Disney company. Again, he kind of took it from we're an animated movie studio that is doing well in theme parks and kind of supercharged it and showed, if you invest in these theme parks, if you expand, the demand is there, the people will respond. And I think that led to,
if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, I mean, because basically under Michael Eisner, we got Hollywood Studios, we got Disneyland Paris, we got Animal Kingdom. Hong Kong, that was started under him because Bob Iger opened that one. So, he really expanded. And then I think it also allowed, when Bob Iger came in to be CEO, he kind of expanded through IP. Again, like it laid the roadmap of, you can grow the Disney company. It's not just this thing that it's only ever going to be for children. It's only ever going to be animated. You can grow, you can expand. And we've gone through these crazy expansion eras since, I think, Eisner was CEO.
Yeah. And we did, and whenever we did our series, The Disney Decades, like this was a big like topic that we talked about, of how, how Eisner came in and sort of how he exited the company. And
the exact same way. The exact same way. The way he came in was the way he went out. It's like you couldn't write a Hollywood story or a script like that bookend as with that. But yeah, so kind of going back to Hollywood Studios. So what we're talking about today, it started... so again, as all these do, they start before opening day. But it started back with Imagineering and Imagineers Marty Sklar and Randy Bright. basically they were tasked with creating new pavilions for Epcot. So the original plan was, hey, Epcot's been open for a while, we need to expand Epcot. And they came up with two ideas. One ultimately became the Wonders of Life, which opened in 1989 in Epcot. And the other one was a great movie pavilion, which the idea was they're going to have the great movie ride and kind of basically about movies at the pavilion. So Michael Eisner became CEO in 1984. And when he saw this, he goes, I love that idea for the great movie ride, but a pavilion's too small. Let's make a third theme park around it. So that's where ultimately the idea for Hollywood Studios came. And as it grew, it became this mix of it's going to be a theme park and a live production movie studio.
That sounds familiar. It sounds exactly like Universal Studios.
It is similar. So Universal Studios had the Backlot tour on their studio, and that dates back. I did not realize this. Like when we went, we finally got to experience the Backlot tour.
Yeah, it was our first time. What was it?
Last year? 2 years ago? I think it might have been 2 years ago at this
It
point.
was 2 summers ago. I think.
It's hard to remember. Yeah, I think it was 2022. We went. And I thought that was something that became part of, like, once Universal Studios Hollywood was there, that they had the Backlot tour. But the Backlot tour and things go back to like 1915 on the Universal lot. Now, it was just like bleachers, so you could sit and watch them film the movies. The actual tram tour came around in the 60s. So that had been going around for quite a long time. So this is where some of the drama kind of comes in, because yes, it does sound kind of similar to that. Like, hey, we're going to have a movie studio and a Backlot tram tour, and that's going to kind of be the idea. But the story goes that Universal, seeing how well Disneyland was doing, how well Disney World was doing, wanted to build a theme park in Florida to compete with Disney. And their original plan was to just bring their studio tram tour to Florida and just, you know, do what they were doing there, build a tram tour, build backlots, and have that. And they pitched this idea to multiple companies. Paramount was one of them, and Michael Eisner was CEO of Paramount at the time. So Universal claimed that Eisner basically stole their idea for this theme park in Florida.
Now, I'm just going to look at my crystal ball here and say that Universal Studios should be thanking Michael Eisner for stealing that idea.
Yeah, because it becomes this whole other thing. Like, this is what's so interesting when, like, you look back at like the history of these theme parks and things, because you're right. Like, Universal's plan was to bring their
like
tram
a carbon
tour.
copy of it.
Yeah, to bring their tram tour here. Eisner announces Hollywood Studios. Now, again, Universal kind of said Eisner knew about this. They stole the idea. Disney came back and said, hey, this, a great movie ride was in the works. The other thing is Universal actually made their announcement for their amusement park before Disney even announced Hollywood Studios. So that's the other interesting thing is Universal came out. They said, this is our plan. Disney came out and said, we're going to build Hollywood Studios. And they were actually able, because they already had the experience building theme parks, because they were already kind of there, were able to accelerate their construction schedule so that they were able to open before Universal Studios. So that's why Universal abandoned it. So it wasn't even like Michael Eisner and Disney announced this theme park and Universal's like, wait, we were going to announce that. Like, they made the announcement, but Disney was just farther along and was able to beat them to it. So it caused Universal to completely change course. And they go, okay, instead of a studio tour, we're just going to build attractions based on the things we have in the studio tour and make it a more natural amusement park. So yeah, really completely changed the course of Universal's history.
Yeah, so it was almost like, okay, if you're going to steal our idea of doing a lot kind of tour sort of situation, we're going to steal your idea of doing like a theme park. But then, I mean, it's part of that really interesting push and pull that Universal and Disney have, especially down in Orlando, where it's just like one opens up something cool and then the other one does. And then, so we finally got some announcements from Disney because Epic Universe is going to be opening. So it's just it's an interesting like thing that they need each other to kind of like push each other forward almost.
Yeah, well, what's amazing is because as I was researching this and I read it, I'm like, this is the origin story of the theme park wars. Like, this is it right here. Like, you know, it's like, okay, what started it all? It was basically this. And the fact that Disney builds Hollywood Studios, not only, like we talked about, I think changes the course of Walt Disney World and makes it a vacation destination and gets it on that path. Just like you said, Universal should be thanking them because it completely changes their history too. Like, I think if Universal builds a tram tour that takes some of the scenes and things that they did at Hollywood and puts it in Florida, I don't think it's still around today.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it lasts. The way Disney has grown and the way everything else is going on, they would have had to eventually build a theme park, do something. And Universal Studios has changed hands corporately so many times due to financial constraints, and the theme parks have been bought and sold so many times due to financial constraints. Now they're with Comcast, so they're solid, but you'd have to imagine if they had a struggling tram tour, nobody was going to invest years into it. Okay, we're going to build out a new theme park. We're going to build, we're going to keep this going. I don't think it would be around. And then you wouldn't have these theme park wars. Like, you wouldn't have this battle. It's like almost like it created, like Eisner created Hollywood Studios and created Walt Disney World as a vacation destination, but then he also created the competition that, to your point, pushes them forward to this day. Like, that one decision, if they decided to build not a studios park, like if they decided to build Animal Kingdom in 1989 versus Hollywood Studios, I think Universal
could be a completely different story.
Universal would have done what they've done. They might not even be around anymore. Disney might be the undisputed king of theme parks in Florida. Like, it's so interesting how the drama, how all of this plays into each other. Like, fine, you're going to do this. We'll copy you on making rides in an actual theme park. And then it continues to this day.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how things would be different. So Hollywood Studios, well, okay, not Hollywood Studios, MGM began being constructed in 1987, and it wasn't finished until May 1st, 1989.
Yeah, which is a pretty quick turnaround for them to have it done in 2 years. And I think it got done so quickly, and we'll get into this. There was nothing in this park when it opened. Like, this has got to be
it's pretty bare bones.
The most bare bones thing. Like, if anybody built a theme park like this today, Disney or Universal, like a major theme park company between those two, people would completely, they would just pan the thing. They would just be like, this is the worst thing in the world. There's nothing to do here. Like, it's just, why did you build this an absolute failure? So it's interesting to see how little they put into this, but I think it makes sense that that's why they built it in 2 years from the start of construction. But you mentioned MGM Studios. So yeah, kind of taking a step back again, we've been calling it Hollywood Studios this whole time as opening day. And technically we were incorrect because opening day is Disney's MGM Studios.
Which, the first time you went to Disney and the first time I went to Disney, it was MGM Studios, which makes me feel very old.
Yeah, when we were young, it was still MGM Studios. And again, this kind of goes back to Disney wanted this to be a production studio. They wanted to partner with somebody. What's interesting is, again, more drama with this. I mean,
it seems to me like unnecessary drama. I don't really understand where MGM is coming from here, but yeah, please explain this to the listener.
So this could have, and again, this is where we talked about how Universal should almost be thanking Disney for making them kind of change their plan because, again, it created them. I think made them the theme park they are. MGM sued Disney, and they were in lawsuits with each other over theme parks, and it didn't work out so well for MGM. So basically, Disney signed a licensing agreement with MGM Studios in 1985, so before Hollywood Studios opened, to use the name, to use characters, that sort of thing. Once Disney announces Hollywood Studios or MGM Studios, just calling it Hollywood Studios because that's what everybody knows it as today. MGM sued them in 1988, so before the park opened, saying basically Disney's plan to have a live production studio in this theme park violated their agreement. Because basically MGM, they're a movie studio, so it's like they don't want to have brand confusion and name confusion of like, oh, is this MGM filming shows here? Like Disney was kind of violating. Like it was a licensing agreement to use the name in theme parks, not as part of Disney movies, type thing. And so they ultimately sue them. They kind of work something out. I think there's still lawsuits going on, but basically once the park opens, they really only use the MGM Studios name as part of the park and not kind of really as part of the studios to kind of differentiate it, to kind of help with that. But MGM is not happy, and they decide, hey, we're going to build our own theme park now in Las Vegas. And so Disney sues them in return, saying, hold on, you can't build a theme park now that competes with us. That's a violation.
Because we're using your name.
We're using your name. That's a violation of our agreement. So now they're suing each other over this.
This is so absurd.
And this
sounds like some middle school drama.
It is. It's amazing. Yeah. We sue you because you're not using our name appropriately. Well, we're going to go and build our own theme park. We're going to take our ball.
You know what MGM said?
Yeah.
They said, because it is my name. Because I cannot have another. Any of our listeners messages Joe with what that is from, and I will ship you a candy bar. Or Joe will.
A candy bar. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
So they decide. So this lawsuit goes all the way up to 1992 between them. So this is 3 years after the theme park has opened.
You're not allowed to use Google.
I was going to say, it's going to be so easy for anybody to find out. Going to be shipping out 1,000 candy bars.
No, it's just the first one.
Oh, the first person. Okay. So the judge rules that basically, like, just the two of them need to knock it off, and Disney can continue to use the name of the theme parks, and MGM can build their own theme park as long as they don't exactly copy the Backlot theme, which kind of talk about the theme park that they built. That seems like a lot of it is Backlot themed, but they basically kind of just said, like, you guys just do your own thing, and they kind of just rolled with it.
So MGM opened MGM Grand Adventures, which was in Las Vegas, in 1993, and they were closed by 2000.
Yeah, they did not last very long. So yeah,
they made it 7 years.
The judge settles a lawsuit in 92. They opened in 93. So this opened by the MGM hotel. The space is actually, if you're familiar with Las Vegas, the Topgolf. The Topgolf is now where the theme park was. So kind of back there, but some of the rides there. So when it opened, it had 7 rides. So there was a Backlot River tour. Again, the judge says you can't copy a Backlot theme, but this was a boat ride through simulated film sets. Seems like a Backlot thing. They had a motion simulator ride called...
It was almost like they're like Disney's bread and butter is to do boat rides. So we're going to do...
Yeah. Well, this was 100% a copy. So you have a boat ride. You had a motion simulator called Deep Earth Exploration. You had the Haunted Mine, which, tell me if this sounds familiar to you in terms of the description. Passengers boarded ore cars onto a trip into an abandoned mining operation.
Yeah, that's the pretty much exact, I mean, not exact, but similar story to Big Thunder Mountain Railroad.
Basically, they didn't say they were ghost trains.
Yeah, they didn't say they were ghost trains.
That's the difference.
But they also had to use the word haunted. They had to steal the word haunted too. They're like, we'll take your word haunted and we'll use it. I mean, I wonder how much spite.
That's what the ghost trains are. They didn't call them ghost trains. They just called it a haunted mine.
Yeah, I just, this person was like a very petty, like whenever they were like doing this, they're like, I'm going to be so petty about this. Like, and they were just taking stuff. I will say though, I think for that time era, I feel like these were probably like just very common type rides. Like, cause I feel like our local theme park has similar rides to these. Like we haven't even talked about like the Canyon River, like the Grand Canyon Rapids, like the rapid rides are really common kind of rides to have. Like a haunted type ride.
Yeah, common ride systems.
Right.
But like having a backlot boat ride.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the theming around these rides though
having a haunted mine
Disney-like
that you go through a haunted mining operation. They had a roller coaster. Again, tell me if this sounds familiar. It's called the Lightning Bolt. It was an indoor space-themed roller coaster with a top speed of 35 miles per hour.
Ding, ding, ding.
Sound
I got
familiar?
this one. What is Space Mountain.
Exactly. And then they eventually, in 1997, they moved it outdoors, and like doubled the size of the ride on there. They also had.
I feel like that ruins the ride.
Yeah, and I mean, again,
Because I feel like
this park only lasted 7 years. They weren't doing a lot of things correct here.
Right, like, because you think about it, you know, I guess that like any kind of wild mousy type roller coaster already feels like faster than it goes, but
in the dark,
part of what makes it feel so much fun, like you're going faster, is that it's in the dark. So they took that out of the equation there.
They also had some theater shows. So they had a Pirates Cove, which was an outdoor theater where they had like a pirate stunt show. They had Magic Screen Theater, which had a special effects show and like a BMX stunt show, which Hollywood Studios ultimately got a BMX stunt show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that the one.
Well, I don't know if there's this BMX. I think Hollywood Studios was actually like racing cars.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know. I just
think
think that would be a really cool thing to see live. Although I feel like there would be a high likelihood for accidents. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the BMX show. That's with the Alice in Wonderland in Paris. Theirs is BMX. I was kind of confusing the two, but they had like a stunt show. So yeah, so basically, MGM builds this that, again, very similar. You can kind of tell, like, yeah, they were probably being a little petty about this. You know, just kind of our opinion here. Just, you know, looking at some of these rides of how similar they were to Disney, but Disney really, had nothing to be worried about. It didn't seem like it really ever kind of got off the ground, and it only lasted 7 years. But yeah, just interesting, all of the drama and lawsuits and everything that went into getting Hollywood Studios and how quickly they kind of turned it around. So getting into what was it like there on opening day. So when Hollywood Studios Disney-MGM Studios opened, the Earful Tower was its park icon. So that was the water tower with the Mickey ears on it. You know, everybody loved that. Everybody was very sad once they finally tore that down. But you mentioned bare bones. There was nothing in this park.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the part where, you know, we're talking about the park icon. So I feel like I have to bring this in. We are talking about opening day, but the park icon now for Hollywood Studios is the Tower of Terror. But that didn't open until July 22nd, 1994.
So 5 years later.
So yeah. It didn't come about till 5 years after that opening day. So that's quite a time gap there.
Yeah, I mean, basically the park was the Backlot tour. The Backlot tour, it was a 2-hour experience. So, you know, when we went and the Backlot tour was still there, as we were older, at least from what I remember, the Backlot tour was, you know, much smaller than the original opening day, because a lot of the pieces that were part of the Backlot tour became part of the normal park. So I'm thinking maybe it was like a half an hour, like the total tour. But when this opened, it was 2 hours. This was basically what you did. You did the Backlot tour, and that was it. It was like an hour on the tram going through the different sets and things you had, you know, Catastrophe Canyon, which stayed part of the Backlot tour the whole time. It took you through some of the production studios where they were doing like set building and things. So that was the first hour. And then there was a whole second hour that was on foot that you then walk through the production studios and watch them doing animation for the movies. Or at least that was the idea, or filming whatever show. That really never took off the ground in terms of them using Florida as an actual like thriving movie studio.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the thought there. So
yeah, they did produce some movies, like animate some movies down there. So those were Mulan, Lilo and Stitch, and Brother Bear.
Yeah, those are probably the biggest ones that they worked on. Now they weren't fully produced there, but some of it was worked there. Yeah, like Tom Bancroft, he actually worked on some of the movies, and he was in the Florida animation studio.
Yeah,
we talked to him about that.
Yeah, didn't he talk about having to ship the packages of back and forth with his brother because his brother.
For the Lion King, yeah. Well, he also talked about this, like at lunchtime, you just like walked around the theme park because you were in the, you know, you just go out in Florida and see who was there because you're just, you know, walking around in the theme park. So, yeah, that was interesting. Of like, you're an animator, you're working, and then every 15 minutes you just have people walking by your window, like seeing what you're working on, type thing. But I think the thought was like they were going to do a lot bigger movies and actually have like live action stuff filmed there. So it's like, hey, come see your favorite actor filming this thing. So with that, again, the Backlot tour kind of took up basically the whole park. So it was just Hollywood Boulevard and Echo Lake, New York Street, which is now like Grand Avenue. It became Streets of America. It's Grand Avenue now where the Muppets are. That was part of the Backlot tour.
Oh, wow.
You mentioned Tower of Terror. The whole Sunset Boulevard side of the park was not there. So basically when you walked into Hollywood Studios now, if you go straight, it's Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. If you turn left, that's Echo Lake right there. That's basically all you could go to. You could not go right. That road was not there. You could not go to Toy Story Land, because Toy Story Land, all of those production buildings, that was all part of the Backlot tour. Rock and Roller Coaster, all that sort of stuff. None of that was part of the park. So just imagine walking into Hollywood Studios. You have the Great Movie Ride. You have the Backlot tour, which is basically the whole back of the park, and that was it, because the Indiana Jones stunt show was not open on opening day. Star Tours was not open on opening day. A lot of even the restaurants, like, looking at like the ABC Commissary or the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater, all of those were in buildings that were part of the Backlot tour. So they were not even there on opening day. Like, people talk about
what was there to eat? Like, where?
Well, so there were some on the Backlot tour. There were places to eat. So you did an hour on the tram, and then you got off, and then there was food, there was bathrooms, there was things there before you kind of did the second half of it. And then at the end, like, there was like a gift shop on there. So like they had some food back there, but people talk about, I think now with Galaxy's Edge and Toy Story Land, not so much, but like Hollywood Studios was a half-day park. Mm-hmm. There was a 2-hour studio tour and then one ride. I mean, what was it? A
3-hour park?
3-hour park? Like, it's not even a half-day park. Like, again, it was amazing that they built this, but this would never have gotten built today. Like, it's just, there's nothing to it.
It would have, or it never would have opened when it opened, potentially. Because again, I mean, I wonder if they opened when they opened because they were just, again, trying to beat Universal, or if they opened when they opened because they were like, you know what, we're going to add on to this eventually, but right now it's something new, it's something fresh, it's a different experience than what Disney is currently providing. So we're going to open this, and it's okay that it's not, it's a couple hours of your day. It's not a whole day kind of situation.
I think the other thing too is it was a different time. Again, we view theme parks differently. Like, if something like this came out today, there's going to be a lot of people that are like very negative about it. Whereas again, theme parks were relatively new. Again, Walt Disney World wasn't the Walt Disney World we know of today. I think the other thing is the calculation that went into this is, it's not 100% theme park. It's 50% theme park. It's 50% we're going to film movies here and make money from movie production. And so you didn't need as many guests to come here because you're making money in other avenues.
Well, also, I mean, they did have like audience participation type shows. Like they had 2 different shows. They had the Superstar Television, and in that, guests acted out roles from classic TV. So this is like I Love Lucy, Cheers, Golden Girls.
This was actually super interesting and neat to kind of go back and watch this. So this was in the Hyperion Theater there, but like it seems like they use, I'm guessing, green screen technology, and they cast people. It was a pretty long show. I think it was like a 20-30 minute show, and it was this whole idea of like how television is made, taking you behind the scenes on how they do news, how they do sitcoms, that sort of thing. And you had all these people in it, and the videos I was watching, like I was like, for a second, I'm like, are these people from the crowd or are these actors? Because they seem to know their lines very well. Like they seem to, they put you in a scene and they have like the character from Cheers talking to you, and they have a really good interaction that it really was like pretty seamlessly done. You could tell because there are people on vacation just by the way they're dressed. They're not kind of fully, like dressed like a character would be in the show. But it seemed like a really neat experience to kind of just see that, how they integrated everything.
Yeah, like I feel like, like kind of watching some of it back as a viewer, it's not that intriguing, but I can imagine if you were there, it's a completely different type of experience. And of course, that's going to add to the amount of time that you're able to spend in the park, because they were like half an hour type shows. They were pretty long. And, seemed to be a lot of audience participation and pulling people from the audience to get them to do different roles. So that was one show. And the other show was Monster Sound Show, where guests were invited to do Foley work for a horror comedy starring Martin Short and Chevy Chase. And again, like, they're pulling people from the crowd, and then they're having them make the sounds.
This is your dream.
Yeah.
This is showing you how Foley artistry works and giving you the opportunity to do Foley work.
I think that this might be my actual life calling, because, I don't know. I think that this type of like creative thing where I don't feel like you're probably having to work with a whole lot of people on the regular basis. I mean, you get your brief, you get what they want, but then you have to, figure out how to make the sounds or know how to use the different instruments.
Well, it's very creative because it's not instruments.
Right. Well, I'm saying instruments that have been created over time. I mean,
but that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's a very creative thing of like, okay, somebody needs this sound. How do I make it out of everyday objects? And you're almost always listening to, okay, what noise did that make? All right, if I pitch it up or I pitch it down and I slow it down, I add some reverb. How can I turn, this noise, water dripping or something into a thunderstorm, into something crazy? Like how do you make Chewbacca? You blend, I don't know, what's it, like a lion and a bear and like mixing all those sounds together to make a Wookiee, like something that is nobody's ever heard of before. What does this sound like? How do you make that? Like, it's pretty amazing. And to go back and see this, you're right. Going back and looking at these videos, it's because they're 1990s home movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the quality's not good, but they seem like they would be really awesome shows.
Yeah, if you kind of like take your mind off of that and you put yourself in the situation, then you're like, oh wow, this would have been fun to participate in, because the amount of audience participation I feel like is greater than the amount of audience participation that you see today.
Yeah, and I think you have to give them credit for, they picked a theme and they stuck to it. I mean, the theme of this park was the movies, it was Hollywood, it was how things are created. So you have a backlot tour that shows you building sets, how they do special effects with Catastrophe Canyon. I think they had a whole like wave machine demonstration as well. Then you have this with like, this is how we make TV, this is how we make sound effects. The Indiana Jones stunt show, like I said, was not there on opening day. But it opened in August of 1989, so a few months after. But again, that's on how we do stunts in the movie. So like, it was very well themed, where I feel like, Disney today, it is very IP driven, which this is obviously IP driven. The Great Movie Ride is basically all IP, but I feel like sometimes they get away from their themes a little bit. Like Hollywood Studios now, sure, technically all the stuff there is movie related, with Star Wars and Toy Story
Pixar
Land.
doesn't quite fit in.
Pixar does. Pixar's movies.
It is a movie, but I'm just saying, like, as far as, I don't know, I feel like because it's not live action, it doesn't quite fit into the Hollywood as much.
But that's the thing, like, it's not full live action. It's not full, like, how we make movies. Like, it's not about like how do you make Pixar movies anymore. It's just like, hey, that's a movie, so we can put it here, like,
which is everything that they do.
Yeah, this is on TV, right? So at least they had a really strong theme there. They also had an outdoor theater. It was called the Theater of the Stars, which isn't there anymore. But if you look at a map, this was interesting because I was kind of looking at Google Maps. There's still a road called Theater of the Stars Drive, kind of behind the scenes there in Hollywood Studios. I think this was kind of over where, kind of like where the Star Wars launch bay is. I think this ultimately got taken down to build Sunset Boulevard. It was kind of on that side of the park. But they started opening day with a show called Hollywood, a star-studded spectacular. It only lasted 1 year though. So this was Disney characters and performers singing popular movie songs. It only lasted a year. They then, after that point, they made it a Dick Tracy show. This was when Disney thought Dick Tracy, the movie they made, was going to be the next big thing, and they were kind of going all in on that. And it didn't turn out to be the next big thing, so this show didn't make it too long. Then ultimately, again, they kind of tore it down in terms of Sunset Boulevard. But interestingly, the Citizens of Hollywood did open with the park, so that is kind of the entertainment, which I think since COVID they've not been back to the park. I think Disney announced they are coming back. I don't know if they're technically back in the park yet or not, or that's still kind of on the way. But I know that was a very popular thing of having live entertainment there, people to interact with, which again, opening day at the parks, you needed something there because you did not have enough, once you were done with the Great Movie Ride and the Backlot tour, sure, you could do some of these shows or whatever, but like you needed something else to kind of keep people interested, like walking around and moving. So they did have the Citizens of Hollywood there.
So speaking of shows, when I think of Hollywood Studios, the show I think of is Fantasmic. So I'm like, okay, I gotta look this up. When did Fantasmic actually premiere? When did it first start showing in Hollywood Studios? That wasn't until October 15th, 1998.
So almost a decade.
10 years
almost
later.
A decade after.
Almost 10 years later. So it's just so mind blowing how different that park was, because when you think of the park, like for me, the reason why I brought up these two things that weren't there on opening day, but when I think of Hollywood Studios, first of all, I think of the name Hollywood Studios and not MGM. Finally, I feel like for a large portion of my life, I thought of it as MGM, but I think of, the name, but I also think of, hey, Tower of Terror is the park icon, and the park show is Fantasmic, and I really like that show. I haven't seen it in a while. I would like to go see it. Those are the things I think of, and they were quite a ways away.
Well, that is the other fascinating thing about Hollywood Studios, MGM Studios, is that, I feel like compared to the other parks that we've talked about kind of in this series, where opening day maybe did not have as many attractions or all the attractions that you currently have, but a lot of the opening day stuff was still there.
Yeah, all of the rides and the icons were there whenever they opened, and so Hollywood Studios doesn't really look quite the same because it's not largely the same park.
Yeah, it's not even the theme. It's like if you would take Epcot and you go, okay, we're getting rid of World Showcase and we're putting something completely different in there. That's basically what they did when they got
geodesic sphere.
Yeah, not even that. I mean, you could keep Spaceship Earth, but we're getting rid of that. Or hey, in Magic Kingdom, we are, completely getting rid of Adventureland and Fantasyland. It would completely change or redefine the parks. And that's what they did with Hollywood Studios. They got rid of the Backlot tour. They got rid of all this stuff about making movies, and they expanded and they changed it. And it's really nothing is there. The Great Movie Ride's not there anymore. The shows aren't there anymore. Basically everything from opening day isn't there. You have the Indiana Jones show and Star Tours, which opened in the opening year, but they weren't there in terms of opening day. So it is the one interesting park where basically everything that was there the first day is not there anymore, which is pretty amazing. If you think about that within 30 years, it's a completely different park.
Kind of prepping for this episode, the thing you mentioned, the Great Movie Ride, and that to me was really interesting because I was going through that, and I know people have talked about how they should maybe redo the Great Movie Ride, doing the using the Muppets or something. And it was interesting to me to watch it because it's not what I remembered it to be. I think I was conflating it with Universal Studios, my trips when I was a child, and watching the Jaws popping out of the water and everything.
That's definitely
that was 100% Universal Studios, but I didn't know the difference back at the time, and memory is flawed. But it was interesting because it's almost it's like a Pirates of the Caribbean-esque type ride, but you're not on a boat. But where
I was gonna say, where are you going? I'm interested to see where this goes.
Well, but I'm saying that but you have these animatronics coming out, but the animatronics were all this historical account of movies that were popular at the time.
It was scenes.
Yeah.
You were basically going through the movies. I think what's interesting about the Great Movie Ride, and that was somewhat revolutionary and interesting, is that they had cast members live acting as part of the ride. So you had a cast member who was a narrator, but then they became integrated in these stories.
Yeah, there was like an actual story going on throughout.
Right. And I think there was like a bank robbery, and one of the bank robbers takes over your ride vehicle. Then they come along, and the person guiding you leaves, and they come back. And yeah, you're going through all of these famous scenes. You're going through the Wizard of Oz and Aliens and Singing in the Rain, all that sort of stuff while this is happening. But it's an interesting mix of sets and animatronics, but then also having a live action actor there.
Yeah, and they make you feel like you are part of the movie, is I think is what they were striving to do, because you have conflict, and then it is eventually resolved when the person I think who took over your ride ends up getting like almost like an Indiana Jones style, like turned into a skeleton. The tram driver kind of like makes that person
saves the day.
Yeah, like go away.
And Disney had big plans for this. Like, I did not realize that their plan was to take this into Paris, and they wanted to expand Disneyland Paris. Now, they ultimately did build a Studios park over in Paris, but the plan was to build that sooner and to put a great movie ride out there as well. Now, Euro Disney, as it was called, Disneyland Paris, ran into financial trouble, so all that kind of got put on hold. There was talk whenever they built Muppets 3D, Muppet Vision, that they were going to build 2 attractions there. They were going to have Muppet Vision and a Muppets Great Movie Ride, a spoof of it. And then when Jim Henson died, Disney kind of pulled back on the Muppets and just did Muppet Vision. Apparently, they also tried multiple times to put a Great Movie Ride in Disneyland as part of Hollywoodland expansion of Disneyland, as part of DCA, and just never quite worked out. So they had plans to kind of roll this out in other places, which, they definitely do now. Like, I feel like, they build something and it works, they kind of send it everywhere, but they didn't do that as much back then. So it's interesting they were thinking about that, though.
I will say that watching this back gave me a terrible sense of dread, because as I was watching this, some of the movies that they were showcasing, I was like, oh, I guess that was like culturally relevant at the time. I mean, like, that's a classic movie.
They were all classic movies. But it wasn't, I mean, I think even at the time, some of them were older. Like, The Wizard of Oz is from the 30s. They were just very, very classical and memorable movies.
Okay, but what I'm saying here is that I don't personally have like a big caring attachment to any of those movies. And then it made me horrified, because I thought, what if Disney is just a showcase of a lot of the old Disney films that I grew up with, and eventually somebody will look at the rides one day and say, oh, that's just like an old movie.
I mean, that's why the new rides are Pixar and like and Moana, and like getting the current stories.
Yeah,
in there,
it made me so sad, because then I was like, what if eventually they're like, oh, Disney's like a park that like nobody goes to because nobody cares about that stuff anymore. And
I don't think that will happen. I think that's why Disney's always progressing. They're always changing. You have to do that to kind of keep up with the times.
That was a very dark thought.
Yeah, it is. Okay, we'll move past that. One last thing I want to mention is the other thing, again, to bring people into this park, because as we mentioned, I don't know that there was a ton to really draw people in, is they had the Star Today program. And this was basically Disney's way of saying you are guaranteed to see a celebrity. What caliber of celebrity you're going to see, that remains to be seen.
Well, I mean, the first one that they brought in, Annette Funicello, she was pretty big.
I mean, yeah, she is like the original Mouseketeer and everything. So like, she was the first one to come in, but basically they had a mini parade for them. And this is where, when you're outside of Mickey and Minnie's, the Chinese theater, they have the handprints and people's signatures and everything out there. Those were real. Those were all people that came to the park and did those. Now, I believe they had some people come to the park for like a media preview, because I guess some of the dates actually predate the opening day of MGM Studios, Hollywood Studios. But basically all those celebrities came, they did the handprint, they had a little bit of parade. Some came like multiple days, because hey, if you're there, why not do a couple of days? But some just came one day. But again, it's Disney's way of like, hey, come see a celebrity, and again, it's kind of Michael Eisner using his connections, because he was very big in Hollywood, of like probably calling in a lot of favors. Hey, why don't you come to the park? Free trip to Disney, that sort of thing, to kind of get people enticed to come.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they treated them really well. Like, hey, VIP, we'll get you to
I'm sure there's a lot of people, if you have kids, like I'm sure you could sell a lot of celebrities, hey, have your family come. Like, Disney
we'll put you up in a nice hotel. I mean, I'm sure they were treated well.
Disney does this a little bit now, it's so big and it's so populated, they can't have parades and they can't really announce that celebrities are there because they would just get crushed. Like they would not be able to enjoy themselves. But anytime a celebrity kind of does visit Disney, you typically see something on Disney Parks blog. Like they do
their social media.
They do something on social media of like, hey, I'm here. They film a little video. They interview them. So
who was it? Was it Rumor Willis? Was that who that was? I'm trying to think.
No. I'm trying
to think
Busy
of who.
Phillips.
Busy Phillips just did a thing on their social media, and she's like a super Disney fan. Like she's answering these
questions.
She was answering these questions, and I think that she only missed like one, and I didn't know a lot of the answers, and I'm like, dang girl, you crushed it. But yeah, she knew everything.
But that kind of seems like what they do now is like, hey, you might see a celebrity here. Like we're not going to announce it, and they're not going to be like a parade that you're going to see them. But the celebrities, they do come, and this is kind of the thing you see. So again, very interesting. So I did not know all this about Hollywood Studios. Obviously kind of continuing the series, so we knew we would do it, but researching it again, just Magic Kingdom, Epcot, they kind of were pretty straightforward. It kind of made sense. No drama. Just kept on, trucking along. Hollywood Studios came and they were like the wild child of the bunch of like, hey, we're going to shake things up here.
Yeah, I think this one is not what I would have anticipated to be the most interesting park, but the most interesting park so far. But that leaves one more.
Well, it leaves Animal Kingdom,
and the original conception for Animal Kingdom was definitely different than what they ended up kind of going.
I was going to say I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, maybe there is drama there.
I was going to say I don't think there's a lot of drama in Animal Kingdom.
Well, maybe they were trying to procure dragons and dinosaurs, and they couldn't do it, and there's a lot of drama behind that.
There could be. We'll see. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in Animal Kingdom. So that we will have that episode, coming up within the next few weeks here. But that does wrap up our review of opening day at Disney's MGM Studios, now Hollywood Studios. I want to thank everybody again for listening. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It really helps, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.